Yeah. Talking of England stepping up in attack, I thought they were bloody brilliant. I thought the game was awesome down in Lyon. Andrew, before we get Dan Biggar, he was on the side of the pitch. Were you happy this week with the way in which England played? I thought they looked very good again. Quarter English, remember?
Yes. Yeah, second half. And listen, hugely positive end to our Six Nations. The frustration is still that Scotland game and how shit we played against Scotland. But 16-3 down just before half-time, I'm thinking, geez, this could be messy if France just get another score, and the noise in that stadium, and Biggs, you were there, we'll chat about that in a minute. But I was really impressed. Second half, the way England played. George Ford, I've bagged him at times. He went missing against Scotland. He was brilliant, I thought, against France at the weekend. Marcus Smith at fullback, I thought was brilliant when he came on. You just need to listen to Jamie George in his interview afterwards. He said, when we challenge teams with ball in hand and play with wit, we're a bloody good team. And the frustrating thing for me is, I'm really impressed with the trajectory that this team have gone on in the last 2 weeks and how they've changed, how they've played. But the frustrating thing is how it started. But like in everything in life, it's not how you start, it's how you end. And we ended with a loss, but it was a very encouraging performance. And, Biggs, what was it like? Stadium seemed absolutely epic. The atmosphere was great.
Honestly, the stadium was absolutely rocking beforehand. I've played and been in some amazing stadiums in my time, but that was right up there on Saturday night. Incredible atmosphere, incredible stadium to play at. And just an incredible match to go with it as well. And what I was really impressed with over the last couple of weeks, I suppose the question, we spoke a few weeks ago, didn't we? We said, what's England's blueprint and how do we want England to play? Well, if you're an English fan, you want England to play like they have the last couple of weeks every time they play, don't you? In terms of they challenged the gain line, they had abrasive ball carriers, they moved the ball well, they got their best players into the game, which sometimes sounds easy, but isn't always as easy to do. You want your likes of your Tommy Freemans on the ball. You want Ben Earl on the ball. You want
Lawrence.
You want guys like
Ollie
that
Lawrence.
challenging defensive. Lawrence looked strong in attack and defense. So for me, I thought, especially being pitch side as well, you could see just how in sync they were, and how much I was working for ITV for the England Wales game, and I compare that to being pitch side to the England France game last weekend, and they just looked a different team. They looked like they knew what the next phase was coming. They looked like they knew what the call was next time. They were winning collisions. They looked more comfortable. And I had a conversation with the England analysis guy called a Welsh lad, Joe Lewis, and he said to me, I said, it's a brilliant way for you boys to end the tournament, and he looks as if you found a way to play. And he said the first 2 or 3 weeks was almost sort of just finding out what we were good at and what we weren't good at, and actually sort of spending a bit of time on the attack as well, because obviously the longer you're together, the more fluid things, and get to know people's games. And I just thought that was quite telling, that almost the first couple of weeks they sort of went back to a bit of old school England just to get results. And then they've obviously developed their game, and we're not forgetting that there was a real poor performance up in Murrayfield. But I would be really encouraged from an England point of view after the last couple of weeks. I thought they looked like a proper team on Saturday.
I think actually, Jim, when you talk about England, losing that game to Scotland in the manner we did was actually a blessing in disguise, because it's shaken us into, we've got to change how we play completely. And that's what I take from Jamie George, listen to him. We spoke the other week about some of the ex-players, Ben Youngs and Johnny May, talking about attacks and afterthought. Well, it can't be now. It has to be the first thing you think about, because you've got to score more points than the opposition to win a game. I know that's obvious, but you can only do that realistically, consistently, if you have a decent attacking plan. And we've seen it the last 2 weeks. Some of the performances, Ben Earl, best number 8 in the world at the minute, which isn't fair on South Africans because they haven't played. I know that argument's going to come back up again, but he was a worldie. And you go back a year, Steve wouldn't pick him in the Six Nations last year, yet he's been playing this way for a long time, hasn't he, Jim? So there is, George Martin's come in and done a great job being physical, carrying. But it all comes to me around understanding and having a plan and attack, and players knowing where they're meant to be, what the options are. And there's always 2, 3, 4 options for a ball player, which you go to the first couple of games of the Six Nations, especially the Scotland game. it was one-out rugby at times, which was easy to defend. So we're more clinical. We played at pace, played with physicality, with tempo, and no way was that a fucking penalty against Ben Earl at the end. Ridiculous decision.
We will come on to that. I just want to give a few anecdotes from the games and just like looking at England with not the quarter Chinese lens on, with me, I don't know what English attire that I can have, with me England shirt on, with me England under-19 shirt on. I thought, because France were on. Okay, you look at the way in which they played, like Damien Penaud, my goodness me, Dan, we'll maybe get a few comments on like how good is he. I think he's just like one of the greatest players ever at the minute. But the fact that England managed to live with France in Lyon with all that energy in the stadium and play the way in which they did is enough to show me that they're okay. And that's an England team without Owen Farrell, right? And without Manu Tuilagi. I know, yes, he came on where you're thinking, can England be a decent team without an Owen Farrell, without a Manu Tuilagi, with these players that are retiring or leaving? You know, like as in, is George Ford the answer at 10, or is it Marcus Smith? I don't think Marcus Smith's at 15. I think he got found out a little bit positionally at the weekend. But if I'm an England fan, you've got Feo Boso to come back in as well, and you've got the option of George Furbank at 15 or Freddie Stewart. You mentioned George Martin, who I think is a standout performer. The fact that you've got someone like Dan Cole, who I've actually, and we'll get onto this, I've got him in my Six Nations team of the tournament. I thought how they've managed to get players like that performing, and the bench coming on, Will Stewart as well, like people who have not made a massive impact in an England jersey, it just shows you how quickly it can shift. And clearly they've got a good coaching setup.
I think they also learned a little bit from the first couple of weeks that they picked the best players in those positions instead of picking a team to maybe just get the job done, if that makes sense. So you look at George Furbank coming in. You look at sort of obviously Mitchell was there from the start, but you look at Freeman, these guys, and I just thought that by the end of the tournament they had a much better balance in their team, which allowed them to play in two different ways. And touching on that debate, Jim, about Smith or Ford, I know George Ford had a difficult, certainly the second half in Murrayfield, and a couple of place kicks against Ireland, but I thought George Ford I thought he had a really, really good tournament, and there's George Ford started 10 against Ireland, he started 10 against France in England's two best performances of the tournament, and I thought he was really, really good, balanced. He had a really good balance to his game, varied his game up nicely. His kicking was as accurate as I've ever seen him. Got his backline moving well. They scored 3 tries on the weekend.
4. We got bonus point, pal.
4 tries on the weekend, and I just think he's taken a huge amount of flack, hasn't he, over the last year or whatever it is, and I think he deserves a huge amount of credit for bringing that team together when there's a huge amount of pressure on him. And I stayed in Lyon over the weekend actually, and Sunday morning we sort of went round for brunch and everything, and there was obviously a load of English people in Lyon having breakfast and lunch and things, and it seemed to be the last 2 weekends have just re-energized England's fan base again, and it looks as if they're excited now for the summer tour instead of dreading that summer tour to Japan and New Zealand. And I think that the way they're playing, if they continue to pick players who are on form and best suited for the way they want to play, I think England are going to be slowly getting back to the top of world rugby again.
Yeah, and we've got a hard 2024. The rest of the year now. We play Japan, then we go 2 tests in New Zealand, then the autumn we've got the ultimate. So we've got the 3 big ones from the Southern Hemisphere in New Zealand, South Africa and Australia, and then Japan again. So basically we're bookending a load of tough games with 2 games against Japan to start post Six Nations and then end the year. But that's the thing, and I actually think the shock of how we performed against Scotland has kicked this team into having a new identity, and that's what's excited the fans that you're talking about, Biggs. The connection again now, because they actually are trying to play to space. They're trying that, they look like an organised team. Whereas before it's been dull, and I've been vociferous on here about it, how England have played, and yes, we got to 3rd in the World Cup, but it was dull to watch, and the connection wasn't there with the fans. And we didn't lose at the weekend anyway. We didn't lose. We just ran out of time.
No, just ran out of time. That was the statement.
Have you ever heard anything like that? What is that about? We didn't lose. We just
I wish
ran
I could have used that a few times in my career, that's for sure. Yeah,
Steve. Anything but that.
I couldn't use that. If there was longer time when we played New Zealand, it could have been about 150-0. So I was glad the final whistle went.
Pod.
Rugby pod.